with the local and international media industry representing queer characters, our stories, and content. The real question is our South African media industry representing the LGBTIQ plus community fairly and equally? And are our stories being told authentically? Well, let's find out. Fantastic. Welcome back to We're Queer, my dear. So today we are very honored to have Mond Motadi in the house.
Hi.
Welcome to the We're Queer, my dear family.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I think let's open up and let's find out what is it that you are doing and what are you doing that's activating greatness right now?
Oh my gosh, that's a very interesting question to start off with, but really, really interesting. I mean, you know what? I am a TV presenter and a storyteller. I currently run my own production house, which is called Mond Motadi Productions. It is a production house that is queer mandated, all about African content, African queer content. Yes. Recently we just did my short film, which got nominated for an international award. So I'm also in the process of working on a TV series, which is queer orientated. So things are taking slow and gradual, but they look quite promising.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And that's how you change the narrative within the traditional communities in terms of acceptance.
Yes.
By means of multimedia.
Our stories need to be told, and it's great that we create our own platforms where we can showcase our stories. But I want to ask you, are we doing enough as a media industry in creating platforms to showcase queer narratives?
You know, I think about a lot about where we come from in terms of queer content. I always want to find references to where we are today. If you look at how far we've come, I mean, I always reference a lot of Bev Ditsi, Sam and Goli, because from when they came out into the world and they started expressing themselves, especially in the South African context, it was a different world then. You know, it was a world where they were fighting for so much and they did so much for us. And so I think in the media space, especially considering the fact that Bev Ditsi is somebody who is a filmmaker, you know, who, I mean, did Simon and I don't know if you guys have watched Simon and I, which is an incredible film. And when I watched that, I thought to myself, wow, in the 90s, there were people that were actually advocating for something. Yes. You know, and when we talk about African content, what do we have as reference? I mean, for me, when I think about Simon and I, you know, I think about all these great people that we had threesomes, you know, when I was growing up watching those people, you know, and knowing that they existed really kind of brought a lot of landscape to me. So I think we've come far in terms of the media representation, but we can definitely do more.
What I want to add to that is, like, people have always been advocating for LGBTIQA rights. It just wasn't necessarily placed on a platform for other people to see. But I want to ask, for instance, let's take an international broadcaster like Netflix, for instance, who has been pioneering LGBT content. Yes. I mean, if you look at Queer Eye, you look at Orange is the New Black, We Are Here, you know, there's so many content there. But what are we as a South African media industry doing to including and promoting queer inclusiveness, especially with people of color?
Yes.
And especially heading into a streaming era.
Yeah.
How do we go about that, and what is being done regarding that?
You know, I think I always emphasize the importance of collaboration. A lot of the times when you're in the media industry, you need to understand that it's a juggernaut of an industry. There's so many entities that actually build the whole entire thing. And most of the times people always say, but we're going to go speak to producers and go to production houses and do this and whatever. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, because what you usually have is that you have producers, you know, taking your ideas and then taking them into their own hands. And those are some of the issues that people experience, especially when you're a young storyteller, trying to tell these queer narratives. So for me, I think collaboration is an important thing. That is a really, and I find that with the story that I'm working on currently, I've had to collaborate with other production houses because I was able to recognize that I'm too small to present myself to a juggernaut like Netflix, to be like, oh no. But when I collaborate with another production house, I'm able to kind of still be within the industry and still bring in a different and fresh, new, innovative energy into the industry as well.
I want to ask now as well, in terms of, so that is you from an individual perspective.
Yes.
But remember that right now we have an entire country who focuses on television.
Yes.
And I mean, majority of our people are being fed through what is being broadcasted on local television. Not everyone has access to streaming at this very moment in time. You know? So a lot of people are still watching our local channels.
Yes.
What is being done there in terms of our narrative? And are we being expressed? Are stories being told? Are they authentic?
It happens, but not a lot. I mean, like.
If you take, for instance, Simnalan, who had, the first transgender character on there.
Yeah.
A few Cake series who had their first interracial couple, and we had our first, marriage on a local soap.
Yeah.
These are unfortunately all very Afrikaans-driven soaps, which is still, a bit frowned upon.
Yes.
But I'm glad that there is, people taking risks and people putting representation out there for people, especially in closed-minded conservative communities.
Yeah.
But we need to do more.
Yeah, no, definitely we do. I mean, if you look, Generations also had a couple of they had a transgender character, which wasn't really, it had its own issues that people felt like it wasn't well represented. We had a gay storyline back in the days, like 2009, 10, somewhere around that timeline, which was really quite an impressive because it was earlier on. There was still a bit of a taboo back then. We had a show on SABC1 called After 9, which was, shows that were touching base. We had Intersections, which was a show on SABC1, which also touched base on queer men in the closet and all of that. And I think it was gradually kind of coming into the scene, where it's been introduced to people as an ideology. But I think what we need to be focusing on right now is the fact that we want to be the center of the story. I think for the longest time, for the longest time, we're always the gay cousin or the gay friend or the gay brother. We need to have a whole story that actually informs people about who we are, our lifestyles, where we're going, what we do, what are the issues that we face in our everyday lives, and where are we going, because we have dreams.
But you see, that's also the problem, T, with media is they sugarcoat it. They don't, it's not authentic, it's not relatable, it's not truthful.
I read it from the outsider's point of view and I'm like, I'm not gay. That's the narrative. Then I'm definitely not queer at all. So,
interestingly enough, Intersections is now on Netflix.
Yes.
So that's quite big for us. But also, I just wanted to ask, from your point of view, how important is it to have young writers on these behind these stories?
Very, very important. That's one of the things that I was fighting for. I worked in the industry. First started off as a presenter and I did a few acting scenes. Worked on MTV Sugar. Kind of really had my fair share of being in the industry and understanding it from the outside and the inside, and that kind of gave me a holistic perspective. So I think it's very important for young writers to be introduced into the industry. Very, very important, because a lot of the times that you find that they have to work their way up and that you never really get there, because what you do is that you end up becoming part of like the assistant writer or something along those lines, and you spend your time just contributing to a storyline that you're not even involved in. So I think it's very important to introduce young writers. And it's hard, it's not easy, very, very difficult, because not any production house is going to willingly say, okay, let's just take a young writer and take them into our own arms and whatever, because you have to fight. There are many of us. And that's why I'm advocating for the digital platforms. I'm saying, and you mentioned something very valid, that like South Africa largely, you mentioned something very valid, that largely South Africa still watches television. Yes. And they do. And that's because obviously, cable TV, we live in an underprivileged country where there's a lot of issues where not everybody can afford streaming platforms. Data is expensive. There's so many issues that involve that.
But Mondo, what do you think the fear is? What do you think the fear is of getting our stories told on local television platforms?
There's a lot of things that influence who we are. We live in South Africa. We live in Africa. There's the cultural aspect. There's also the religious aspect, which are very, very important notions that move our society forward.
This country,
especially in this country. A lot of people take their culture serious. A lot of people take their religion very serious, and which in turn tries to make us a conservative country, they say. So I think those are some of the things that are actually hindering us from getting to tell these stories, because people are afraid. Because immediately when you start sharing these stories, people gravitate towards sexualizing it, or they gravitate towards demonizing it very quickly, because they're just like, no, this is not what it's supposed to be, and that in itself then makes a lot of people feel scared to even want to share the story.
I want to say, it comes to light, and please correct me if I'm wrong now, because I think we're just trying to unravel this.
Yes.
It seems like the people in power have some sort of blockages in terms of having the story come through because of what you're discussing in terms of the religion, and there's obviously a power that holds back our true stories.
So what we do need to realize is it takes courage, and there are people at the top who's willing to take the courage and put representation on TV. And we need more representation or more courageous people in terms of local television channels, and not your traditional older leaders, but more younger types of people who are willing to take the courage and put this forward. And they are going to get a lot of backlash, but we need them.
I think it's also because we don't have enough people behind the scenes. Doing, telling the stories.
That's true. I mean, you're right. I mean, my production house, how I even got to naming it and creating it was because I recognized that. And I was like, okay, I mean, you'll see one lesbian in the crew once in a while. Hey, what's up, girl? I see you. We're the same team. What's up, girl? And it'll bring me so much joy. I mean, we even go to a corner, smoke break, what's up, whatever it need to be, and have a chat up a storm or something along those lines. It was a comfortable thing. And then I was like, but there's so many of us who go to like film schools. There's so many of us who go to media schools. We really are very creative people. Queer people are very creative people, and they're creatively inclined. If they were just given the opportunities to be able to do the job, they could actually do it authentically and quite truthfully. So I recognized that. I was like, there are not many of us. How do I then, kind of seize the moment or seize the opportunity? Is by creating my own and really hiring people who are LGBTQI specific so that they can be in those writers' rooms, they can be in those, in the crew and in the cast, so that together we can work through that.
So with them all coming together, I think we need to highlight the importance of our stories being told, because I think majority of people will be like, oh, they want to be heard and seen again, oh, they want to be the center of attention again,
There's much more to
There's
that.
so much
deeper.
more. So I think if we can dabble into why is it so important for stories to be told, for someone who looks like me, who sounds like me, who can be as free as I am, for a younger person who's watching this, for them to identify with Jodi and be like, oh my word, he sounds like me, he looks like me, he's a little flamboyant,
flamboyant.
and he's being himself. Why? Can we go deeper into that, the truth behind why our stories need to be told?
I mean, we have a very wide range of very publicly known celebrities who are out and advocating for LGBT
Definitely.
rights. But are they doing enough?
And do they represent everyone?
And do they represent? It all comes down to representation.
It all comes down to representation, and obviously representation. I was telling my best friend the other day, and I said to him, people think representation is just, if we're going to talk about representation, you're plunking one black guy amongst white people and saying, oh, that's representation, or plunking just one lesbian woman in a story or whatever. That's representation is a variant ideology. There's so many layers to it, and I think if we start thinking about it in that aspect, we can be able to open up everything and really get to see the crux of the story and tell it in many layers. Because as you mentioned, yes, representation is important, and there are many layers to who we are. We're not just feminine, we're also masculine, we're also creative, we're also in the corporate world, we're also in many industries. And I think if we are presented in media, it should be in those many forms, because we are multifaceted people.
I mean, Mond, I just want to go into this. What do you think about gay actors playing straight roles or straight actors playing gay roles?
I went to an art school. Big shout out to the National School of the Arts. I went to an art school. I was blessed enough. I mean, I grew up in a small town, actually. I grew up in a village. I went to school in a very Afrikaans town. Couldn't come out there. Went through a lot of bullying, a lot of tumultuous things. A lot. I think that's why I'm very passionate about like my activism and my work, and making sure that my art is my work and it's my politic. And that's one thing that I'm very, very passionate about. So because I went to an art school, I do believe that like queer actors can play queer characters. I definitely do believe that. I think I got asked this question again when I was doing Feminine Lotus, and it came up again, and I said, the most important thing to realize is that for me, if you are an equipped queer actor, we must not forget the artistic element of it. If you're an equipped, we're not going to just say, just because you're queer, let's just come and put you in a role, because at the end we also still need to consider the artistic interpretation of the art form. So if you're an equipped queer actor, definitely you can get the role. It's yours. Come and audition and line up, And I think for the first time in a long time, I mean, I saw it with Ryan Murphy. Ryan Murphy does it very well, where he intentionally does it. He says, I'm going to go get you in Broadway and I'm going to put you on the screen, and you're going to act it out for me. And I think that's brilliant, because he knows that those people are equipped actors and they can be able to deliver the role.
We need those Ryan Murphys here.
But again, it comes down to the thing. I feel, straight people can play gay characters.
No, definitely.
But do it authentically.
Yes.
Do not go to the stereotyped, stigmatized perception of what we have, what queer people are.
Yes.
No, definitely. No, definitely. You are definitely right. You're very definitely right. I mean, it's one debate that's continuously happening, especially now with more visibility coming in. A lot of people are very passionate about that thing. We're like, no, cause whatever, but they need not to neglect the artistic interpretation of the art. It's a very important thing. And I think, let's not even negate the people that want to play queer characters. Let's see where this can go. It must be authentic. It must be truthful.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't come and make it a mockery, because this is serious.
But then that trickles down to directors as well.
Yeah.
Having queer directors.
Yes.
What do you feel about having, let's say, a straight director or heterosexual director directing a queer movie?
Entirely. Funny enough, my short film was actually directed by a heterosexual man. Okay. Him and I was anxious. I'll be honest with all of you. I was anxious at first because I'm so passionate about it. I remember I was so emotional. I had a lot of anxiety. I'm like, guys, I'm really passionate about telling this story. But it was, I had entered the NFVF competition, which was part of the government, and we had to go through different stages where I was part of the writers section where I had to write the story, and then it had to be taken on by another director for moving forward. And in that, really, we had to develop a relationship together. I was anxious. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, are we going to be able to work well together? Are we going to be able to do this? And I remember I had to meet with him first before we even got on set. I said to him, look, we need to meet up and sit and chat. Yes. And really, you need to get to understand where I'm coming from with the story, what I'm actually trying to say and what I'm about. So we met and we had a conversation. And I said to him, look, I'm very passionate about this thing. For me, it's not just a story. It's people's lives. I've been doing activism work since I was like 16, shouting, screaming, and going to the streets and doing all these things and creating movements in university, doing all of these things. And I said, I realized my art is my activism. And if we're going to tell this film, we need to make sure that it speaks. And it transcends to the people that it's speaking about. And he understood it very well. And how he came so prepared. He came with a presentation. This is what I think it should look like. This is what I think. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I feel as well. And we were gelling, and even on set, we got to understand. So I think it's the most important thing when you work with a heterosexual director or writer or anybody, it's literally sitting them down and making them understand where you're coming from. Because essentially, you are in the room. I always mention this thing when I say to people, don't talk bad about me when I'm not in the room. Speak of me good even when I'm in the room. Don't mention me good when my name is mentioned. So it's one of those things that respect me even when I'm no longer in the room.
Now, Mond, because now you had entered this competition and then this director had taken taken it over. What would you have done if that conversation with him hadn't gone the way that it did?
That's intense. And it's so interesting. I'll mention that other writers that were part of the whole, because there were 10 of us, experienced some of those experiences where they were not happy with what was going on and stuff like that. And I tried to put myself in that situation where I was like, what would have I done had I not been? And I found myself in a situation where I'm like, I'm not impressed. I'm not whatever. It would have created a lot of conflict. But at the same time, I would have wanted my voice to be heard. Yes. Because even as much as we had a discussion, there were many pointers. What I appreciated about my director personally is the fact that he, even on set, I made sure that I was on set. He would come to me and say, what do you think about that shot? Do you think it's great? I mean, I was thinking maybe I want to go a bit more dark. I want to do this. And I was like, it's a collaborative thing. Yes. It's a collaborative thing. I think that's one thing we need to remember. In queer work, if we're going to do it, we got to do it together. Unity within the community. And I preach this a lot of the times, even on social media and whatever. I call myself the gay superhero. That's why everybody knows me. Because that's what I preach every day, is that unity within the community. If we divide ourselves, if we're always fighting amongst each other, if we have all these wars and all of these things, and but you're femme, you're butch, I don't know, you're exposing us too much. I'm into rugby. I don't want to do that. Okay, you're into rugby, but it's like, girl, we're in the same team, we're fighting the same war. Just because I'm loud and you're not doesn't mean that we're not fighting the same thing. You get me? So I think understanding that from the fundamental basis allows us to build what we're trying to create for each other, so that it even reflects in storytelling.
platforms.
Yeah.
I just want to move quickly back. You mentioned visibility. So
Yes.
just moving a little bit away from, broadcasting, as we say, moving into the music industry.
Yes.
A lot of artists have now started embracing
Yes.
their queer, identities and releasing music that speaks
Yes.
to the LGBTIQA
Yes.
community. But we still face artists who conform to a certain style or genre or whatever,
Yes.
because they fear of what
Other
their
people say.
audience would,
Yes.
how would they would perceive it, that they will lose followers and those type of things.
Yes.
Is that still a relevant and valid thing in 2020?
You know what? It's so interesting. I had a conversation similar to this with my other musician friend who just released an album a while ago, and I said to him, and it was a deep argument where people felt that there needs to be a separation between your queerness and your music, and whether the two are not synonymous or not. And I said to someone, I was like, if you're a queer person living and existing, and you say you are queer, and it's not reflected in your music, or it's not, it's like you're just joining what you represent, and that's not to say everybody must go and let's all be queer. It's your decision.
Absolutely.
Nobody wants to police what you should and cannot do. That's one thing about being queer. Let's not police each other.
But if you're going to do something,
stick to
commit
it. Yes, definitely.
Commit to it.
If you're going to do it, stick to it, because it's very important that you do that. But I also significantly want to mention that visibility within any art form is very important. I preach that a lot, because I think a lot of the time we negate that. We always think, no, if I let people know that I'm queer, if I start singing that I like guys in my music videos and my songs, and I say, two men kissing and I'm in love, you feel like, oh my God, it's going to be too much, and people are going to... And I feel like that time is kind of past.
Yes.
And we're now in a new era. And in this new era, we have to accept it.
We have to wrap up this episode. So
Oh, man.
Sad.
Oh,
there's so much else to talk about. It's too much.
It's too much. But thank you so much for coming onto the show.
No, it's a blessing. Thank
and
you.
I think we are well on our way to create a more inclusive, space within the media industry, especially in South Africa.
Yes.
And people should not be afraid to tell their stories. Go out there, express yourself.
Yeah.
Be true, be authentic, and
Mond, we love what you do, and
Yes.
we
Thank
watch
you.
you.
Thank
We
you.
watch you.
Thank you so much. What a
Looking
humbling
forward to
one.
what you
Thank you so much for having me on the show, guys. It's an honor. Keep doing this.
Thank you so
We need
much.
more of this. We really do. Thank
You're
you.
really making a change. You're really doing a major impact in
Really?
society.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
With our queer stories and characters emerging in the media industry, it is still very important that we keep them relatable, sensible, and authentic. Why? Because our stories need to be told, and it's our time right now to show the world that we, as the LGBTIQ+ community, we ain't going nowhere.